Canada, one of the world's most stable, safe, and livable countries. Whether it's UN reports, immigration brochures, or global rankings, Canada always appears at the top. But wait a minute. If everything is so great, then why does the average Canadian feel poorer every year? This isn't just a feeling. This is data. Let me show you some numbers. According to Statistics Canada, between 2019 and 2024, food prices increased by over 20% cumulatively. During that same period, wages didn't rise as quickly, rent reached historic highs, and household debt grew faster than income. And where did all this come from? Your pocket. Now, the question isn't, why did inflation rise? The question is, why does inflation hurt more in Canada compared to other developed countries? Countries like France, Germany, and Australia also experienced inflation. But there, basic necessities didn't choke people. So why is Canada different? The answer isn't hidden in the 2020s. It's buried in the 1940s and 1950s. After World War II, Canada faced a big question. Such a huge country, such a small population. How do we run the economy? The government made a conscious choice. They said, we need stability, not competition. This is where the concept of national champions was born, meaning a few large Canadian companies were deliberately allowed to grow, completely protected from foreign competition and strengthened through regulation. Initially, this strategy worked. Banks remained stable, telecom networks spread across the country, airlines survived, and agriculture didn't collapse. But over time, these champions rose above the market. Today, the situation is that in many sectors in Canada, competition technically exists, but practically it's dead. And this directly impacts your wallet. Let's talk data. Food. According to the Competition Bureau of Canada, approximately 70% of the grocery market is controlled by just 5 companies. Loblaws companies, Empire, Sobeys, and Metro. These 3 together control the majority. Does this seem right to you? And they don't just run stores. They also control real estate, distribution, private labels, and logistics. Remember the bread price fixing scandal? From 2001 to 2015, major grocers and bakers colluded to fix bread prices. This wasn't my allegation. Loblaws admitted it themselves. Whether you find it expensive or cheap, you have to buy it. The situation is similar in telecom. OECD and international telecom studies show that Canada remains one of the world's most expensive mobile data markets. Bell, Rogers, and Telus, 3 companies control about 90% of the wireless market. In France, where you get 100 GB data for $15, $20, in Canada, paying $60, $70 is considered normal. And foreign telecom giants, the law doesn't even let them enter. And the same goes for banking. RBC, TD, Scotiabank, BMO, CIBC, these 5 banks together hold over 85% of Canada's banking assets. Again, I'm not saying this. The World Bank and IMF themselves say Canada's banking system is stable, but competition is extremely limited. Result? Monthly fees, overdraft charges, service charges, which in many countries are either illegal or tightly capped. Air travel, Air Canada, and WestJet control approximately 75 to 80% of domestic air travel. A flight from Toronto to Montreal often costs more than international flights to Europe. And airports? Don't even get me started. Canada is one of the few countries in the world where the government collects rent from airports. Milk, cheese, butter Canada's supply management system is completely government protected. OECD estimates show that the average Canadian household pays an extra $300, $500 every year, just for dairy products. Here, tariffs are over 200%. Competition is illegal. Now connect all these facts. Food, protected phone, protected bank, protected flight, protected milk, protected... This isn't a coincidence, this is by design. Canada isn't expensive because it's cold or big or has a small population. Canada is expensive because here, competition has been treated as a risk and concentration as safety. And when a system runs in one direction for decades, consumers don't remain customers. They become captive users. In this video, we're not saying Canada is bad. We're showing the dark economic truth of Canada, how history determined today's prices, how policy normalized monopolies, and how choice became just an illusion. If you think the problem is your salary, you're only seeing half the picture. The full picture will appear when you understand not how, but why prices are set in Canada. This story will start with groceries, go through policy, and end with your daily decisions. So if you want to know whether Canada is truly expensive or has been made expensive, watch this video till the end. When we look at Canada today, expensive groceries, costly phone bills, heavy bank fees, we think these are recent problems. Inflation, pandemic, supply chain. These are the words we hear repeatedly. But the truth is that Canada's high cost of living wasn't born in 2220. Its foundation was laid gradually after World War II, and hidden in that foundation is a major ideological decision. After 1945, World War II had ended, Europe was devastated, America had become an industrial superpower, and Canada stood in between. At that time, Canada had a lot of land, abundant resources, but very little population. Canada's population then was about 12 million, less than half of today's. The government faced a question: how do we run a competition-based economy in such a large country? America's model was right in front of them. Thousands of banks, hundreds of airlines, brutal competition in every sector. Let me tell you something here. The more competition, the more benefit for consumers. But Canada consciously said, this model is risky for us. Stability over competition, the birth of a policy. In the 1940s and 1950s, Canadian policymakers chose a different path. They believed that competition could bring instability. With a small population, companies would fail. Infrastructure wouldn't get built. So they said, we need some strong Canadian companies that can serve the entire nation. And then what? This is where the national champions policy was born. This wasn't some secret conspiracy. This was an openly debated policy. In banks, telecom, airlines, agriculture, limited players were given protection in every sector. The intention was clear. Protection from foreign takeovers, long-term stability, nationwide coverage, but every policy has a cost. Let's talk banks first. During the Great Depression of the 1930s, thousands of American banks collapsed. In Canada, almost none. This success convinced the Canadian government that concentration works. Between the 1950s and 1970s, bank mergers were encouraged, foreign bank entry was limited. The Big Five structure was strengthened. Result? Today, Canada's top 5 banks control over 85% of banking assets. I'm not saying this. Check the Office of the Superintendent of Financial Institutions report yourself. Yes, the system is stable, no doubt about that. But what about competition? In the US, overdraft fees are regulated, no-fee accounts are common. In Canada, monthly fees normalized. NSF fees up to $45. Premium service became a basic necessity, stability was achieved, but consumer power was lost, and telecom crossed all limits. Geography became an excuse. In the 1950s, 60s, Canada dreamed of building a nationwide telecom network. Problem? Snow, mountains, remote areas, low population density. The government said, multiple companies won't be able to make this investment. Solution? Bell was given monopoly-level support. Regional monopolies for national coverage, foreign ownership restrictions. By the 1970s, telecom competition had practically ended. Later, privatization happened, but the structure remained the same. Today, Bell, Rogers, Telus control about 90% of the wireless market. The government says, there's competition, look at the flanker brands. But infrastructure, the towers are theirs, the spectrum is theirs, the pricing power is in their hands. Here, competition exists at the retail level, and complete control is at the wholesale level. The situation with airlines is similar. In the 1970s, Canada's airline industry was unstable. Small airlines would come and then go bankrupt. The government applied the same logic again. We need a national carrier. Air Canada received protection. Later, WestJet came in the name of competition, but airport slots limited, route dominance locked, airport fees government controlled. Gradually, all smaller airlines failed and only 2 giants survived. Today, Air Canada plus WestJet control approximately 75-80% of Canada's domestic capacity. If you don't believe it, check Transport Canada's data. This isn't a free market. This is a managed market. Now the most sensitive sector, dairy. In the 1960s, Canada introduced supply management. Its goal was farmer income stability and protection from price volatility. System, production quotas, guaranteed prices, import tariffs. Problem, entry illegal, competition ban. Quota became an asset. Today, dairy quota value in the millions, new farmers virtually locked out, consumer prices permanently high. OECD and independent studies show that supply management puts an extra burden of $300, $500 a year on the average household. This isn't inflation, this is a direct policy-driven price. A common pattern emerges. Now step back and look. Banks, protected. Telecom, protected. Airlines, protected. Dairy, protected. The logic is the same everywhere. Competition is risky, concentration is safe. And for decades, this system remained politically convenient. Companies stayed stable, jobs appeared secure, politicians remained blame-free, but the consumer's voice gradually became irrelevant. There were opportunities, but it's not that the government didn't have chances. There was opportunity, but in the 1990s, globalization arrived. Free trade agreements came. Technology broke barriers. This was the time when Canada could have introduced more competition, reformed regulations, adopted a consumer-first approach. But Canada took halfway steps. Foreign ownership still limited, competition laws weak. Regulators cautious result? The old champions became even more powerful. Canada has a competition bureau, which I'd call a toothless lion, limited powers, weak penalties, slow enforcement. By the time a case runs, the market has already consolidated. The bread price fixing went on for 14 years, and nobody could stop it. This isn't failure. This is structural weakness. Conclusion: Canada's economic system isn't an accident. It emerged from history, was built through policy, was justified by stability, but every system becomes outdated at some point. Today, Canada stands at that very point where companies are too big to challenge, regulators are too cautious to act, consumers are too tired to fight, and this is the foundation on which today's high costs, frustration, and helplessness stand. When monopoly became normal after 2000, when monopoly wore a mask, Canada officially started looking competitive. Governments began saying, there's choice in telecom. The grocery sector is fragmented. There's innovation in banking. But in reality, monopoly had taken a new form. There was a shift from open monopoly to hidden oligopoly, where not one brand, but 10 brands get the same owner. Grocery, multiple brands, same owner. In the early 2000s, Canada's grocery sector appeared to be changing visibly, along with big stores, discount chains, ethnic stores, pharmacy-based groceries. Seeing all this, consumers thought, now there's choice. But the numbers tell a different story. According to Competition Bureau data, top 5 grocery companies cover 70% of the market. And among them, the top 3, Loblaws, Empire, Metro, hold dominance in the majority of provinces. Loblaws alone controls grocery stores, shoppers, drug mart, private labels, distribution centers, real estate meaning? Even if you change brands, change stores, go budget, the money still circulates within the same ecosystem. And it reached its peak when from 2001 to 2015, for 14 years, Canada's biggest grocery chains and bakery suppliers coordinated prices on packaged bread. This isn't theory, these are court records. Loblaws admitted participation and cooperated in exchange for immunity. Penalty? Consumers got a $25 gift card, companies made billion-dollar profits. The message was clear. Risk is low, reward is high. And the industry heard this message. 2020. Inflation excuse. By 2020, supply chains broke. Inflation was global. But something strange happened in Canada. Between 2022 and 2024, overall inflation started cooling, but grocery prices stayed high. Food inflation remained above historic average even after peaking. During the same period, Loblaws, Metro, and Empire were all reporting record profits. Companies said, margins are thin, just 3 to 4%. But the problem wasn't margins, the problem was scale. When volume is in the billions, even 3% becomes power. Telecom, flanker brands, forget fake competition Bell, Rogers, TELUS, all 3 played a smart move. Wholesale access mandated prices drop. In Canada, foreign entry blocked, spectrum auctions expensive, MVNOs limited result. Canada still remains among OECD's most expensive data markets. Banking, digital mask, same structure. In the 2000s, banks also wore a new mask, apps, digital banking, reward programs, but the core structure remained unchanged. Big 5 banks, 85% banking assets, mortgage market dominance, credit pricing power fees. In Canada, monthly account fees, normal, overdraft $45, inactivity fees. In the UK and EU, many fees are capped or banned. Why the difference? Because there's no competition pressure. Fintechs came, but no scale? Regulatory hurdles? Banking license barrier. Banks are still the gatekeepers. Airlines, fee upon fee. When looking at tickets, you wonder, why so expensive? The answer isn't just the airline. In Canada, airports pay federal rent, airlines pay airport fees, consumers pay multiple charges. 30 to 40% of a domestic ticket is non-fare charges. But competition, slots limited, gates controlled, incumbents favored. Budget airlines came, jetlines, Swoop, Lynx. But capital pressure, access issues, price wars. One by one, they vanished. Milk, why prices never go down. The supply management system became more rigid over time. Quota became an asset. Political pressure increased. The Canadian Dairy Commission sets the yearly farm gate price. Even when inflation falls, dairy prices rarely fall, mostly rise. Canada has among the highest dairy prices relative to income. The pattern is clear. Now pay attention in every sector. Business risk on the consumer, stability for the company, cost for the public. When the market is bad, prices go up. When the market improves, prices stay. This is not inflation. This is asymmetric power. Regulators, intent versus impact, CRTC, Competition Bureau, OSFI, all exist, but limited mandates, slow processes, political pressure. By the time action comes, the market has already consolidated. Regulation is reactive, not preventive. So far, we've seen monopoly isn't an accident. It was built through policy and became smarter over time. Now the question is, if prices are high, if there are complaints, if the data's out there, why isn't the system breaking? The answer lies more in power dynamics than in economics, revolving door, regulator, or industry. ACI family. In Canada, regulators are technically independent, but practically, telecom, banking, grocery, in every sector, a silent cycle runs. The cycle looks like this. Industry executive, government advisory role, regulator board, consultancy, back to industry. This is called the revolving door. Let me give you some examples. Ex-telecom executives, CRTC advisory roles, ex-banking executives, policy committees, or ex-grocery insiders, supply chain councils. This isn't illegal, but it's not neutral either. When the rulemaker personally knows the industry, the rules become soft, and you know this very well. Corporate lobbying, polite but powerful. In Canada, lobbying is legal and publicly registered too. But look at the scale. According to federal lobbying disclosures, telecom companies, banks, grocery giants, every year they spend millions on policy meetings, feedback on draft regulations. This lobbying isn't loud. It's polite, white papers, data briefs, concerns. The narrative is always the same. If competition increases, jobs will go, investment will stop, stability will be in danger, politicians don't take risks. Media ownership, narrative control. Who owns major Canadian media? Bell Media, Rogers Media, Post Media. These are the same companies about which critical stories should run. Conflict of interest? Obvious, but normalized. Rarely is it asked today in Canada. If inflation is global, why are margins at record highs? When narrative is controlled, anger becomes directionless, public fatigue. When people get tired. The most underrated factor, exhaustion, high bills, job pressure, housing stress. People say, it's the same everywhere. What can we do? The system survives on this. Revolution stops not from resistance, but from exhaustion. Immigration, demand bata, supply protected. Canada sees immigration as a growth engine. Policy target, 400K plus newcomers per year, but housing supply slow, grocery supply controlled, telecom capacity fixed. Demand increases, supply stays protected. Result, prices go up, but the blame goes to immigrants, inflation, global economy, never to market structure of competition. Law, not sharp, but soft. Canada's Competition Act, outdated language, high burden of proof, low penalties. Companies merge, then claim efficiency. Seeing all this, I feel that consumer harm is long-term, but the law looks short-term. Conclusion. Monopoly doesn't run in Canada because people are foolish, rather because the system is complex, blame is diffuse, power is polite. The system doesn't fight, it wins through patience. Now the final question. If the problem is real, the system is entrenched. What should people do? Selling revolution is easy. Telling the reality is necessary. The first step, this is not normal. When you accept high phone bills, grocery shock, banking fees, as destiny, the system wins. And with such thinking, nothing will change. Awareness isn't powerless. Silence is powerless. Ask the right questions. When a company says, we support Canadians, ask, do they support competition? Do they lobby to dilute regulations? Don't look at brand messaging. Look at policy voting records. Political pressure should be consistent, not short-term. One-time outrage doesn't work. What works? Letters to MPs, participation in consultations, local media pressure. Politicians don't fear votes, they fear consistent noise. Choose better choices, not perfect ones. The system won't completely break overnight. But smaller providers, co-ops, credit unions, local stores, every shift sends a signal. Even a 5 to 10% movement shows up in the boardroom. Talk about it. The most powerful tool, talking. When people ask, why is Canada so expensive? And the answer comes, systemic reasons. That's when the narrative changes. Final thought, Canada is not a corrupt country. Canada is not a poor country either, but Canada is an overprotected market. And when protection goes more to corporations than to the public, the result? High prices, low choice. Quiet frustration. Canada isn't expensive because we earn less. Canada is expensive because we ask less. Thank you for watching the video. Stay healthy and enjoy life.